Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Tea Time with Taylor. This is a monthly webinar series that I like to bring to all of our Performance Tracker X clients and JCG community of individuals who are interested in customer experience. And today is actually a really special session. Normally, I don't have any guests on with me other than sometimes consultants, but this is our first time having a client of JCG and of Performance Tracker on with me. So I would like to introduce you all to Jay McAfee. He is the Chief Executive Officer at Thomas McAfee Funeral Homes in South Carolina. And Jay is the fifth generation of his family with Thomas McAfee. So he has 4 funeral home locations currently on Performance Tracker, and all 4 of these locations were an award winner this year for our Excellence in Customer Service Awards. So Jay, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. Glad to be here.
Of course. So everyone, I just want to give you a little bit of background information on the awards themselves, just in case you're not aware of what I'm talking about or referring to in regards to the award system that we honor our participants in the Performance Tracker X platform every year. So Performance Tracker X is a survey platform. Each year we have the top performing winners. We honor 15 winners in every single size and category. So it's 3 different categories of call volume across North America, and actually this year Jamaica as well. So it's the US, Canada, and Jamaica. And we honor those winners each year by providing them with a physical award, and it's really bragging rights as well with their top performance. And that's coming directly from the family surveys. So we use a couple of different key metrics, including a net promoter score, an overall performance score, and a total value index to determine the winners of this award. And it's notable too that each of these winners does have to have a minimum of 30% response rate at bare minimum to even be qualified for consideration of the award. So Jay and his 4 locations are actually well above that. I believe it's like between 38 and 43% from last year, which is just awesome. And we have some locations throughout the country that are well into the 50s and 60s in their response rates. So I bring that up because the first question that I'm going to prompt Jay with is regarding the response rates for the award itself. But really quick, I do want to give a special thanks to Jay and then the other 2 award winner interviews that we will be publishing in this year's Trends and Insights report. So that's Paul Bonfiglio with Bonfiglio Funeral Homes, and then Jimmy Altmeyer with Altmeyer Funeral Homes, both of which have their locations on Performance Tracker and were high-ranking winners this year, which is pretty exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into questions now with Jay. Now, Jay, it's of note too that your gray mortuary location came in first place in their sizing category, which is just outstanding. So clearly you guys are doing something right across the board with all of your families and taking special care with them. What steps does your team take to achieve those high response rates? First of all, because you can't have high scores if you're, or I guess statistically valid data if you're not actually receiving responses.
Yeah. I mean, we think that's really important, right? If our response rate isn't where it needs to be, then we're not really getting an accurate representation of the experience that our families are having with us. So, I think the best thing that we did was simply opening up discussion to the team about how to increase our survey response rate, and really leaned on those who had really high survey return rates, talked to them about what they were doing, and just created an environment where the team could share success stories and what they'd been experimenting with. And I think what we learned from those who had really high survey return rates is that they were really making an effort to be dynamic in the way they approached the conversation about the survey. So we would love for everybody to be talking about the survey at the end of the arrangement conference, right? That's an ideal scenario. What we learned though is that may not be appropriate every time. And so it's ideal if that conversation can happen organically at the end of the arrangement conference. But if a family becomes really emotional at the end of the conference, if a family is getting anxious and they're ready to get out of there, and they've got to get on to the next thing, and we've all had that experience, then they're not going to absorb the conversation about the survey. And so we really, worked with the team to do some brainstorming and think about where can we identify other points in the process, other points in the family's journey with us to, really kind of insert that conversation and bring that conversation up. And I think a couple of the touch points where we've had success is one, actually after the service, we found that some families really it's like a pressure release, right? They've gotten through the service, their shoulders drop a little bit, the anxiety cools off, and directors are able to engage in a way that's maybe a little bit more informal and casual. And so a mention of the survey at that point has been successful. I think the most successful that we've heard from our directors who have really high return rates is during the follow-up call with the family. So we try to make a follow-up call with every family after the service takes place, maybe a week or so after. And when they can talk about that survey in that call, it seems that we have a lot of success. So again, I would just lean on the idea that there's a need to be, we've found, at least in our community, there's a need to be dynamic in kind of placement of that conversation, so to speak.
Yeah, it's like you have to be intentional, but also obviously respectful of the interaction that you're actually having with the family. And if it doesn't seem natural to mention the survey, it can definitely be a tough thing to slip in, especially when when families are grieving and funeral directors are just of the nature of like, I want to take care of my family, so they don't always know how to ask the family for something in return. So I think that's really awesome, and that's actually the first time that I've heard of it being brought up on like a follow-up call after services and everything. I really like the timing of that, so that's really awesome. I guess it's a little bit of a follow-up question on your response rates. Would you guys say that you pride yourselves on how heavily families are engaging with the survey? Because that 37 to 43% that you guys are getting across your locations, that's kind of unheard of in consumer surveys in general. Just like outside of the profession, taking it outside of funeral services, it's anywhere between 5 to 10% usually on consumer surveys. And that's like automotive or hospitality. But obviously the personal nature of what you guys are doing and building these relationships with your families, you guys are creating that engagement across the board, right?
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. I also think, families are motivated to complete a survey, either when things go really well, when they've had a really good experience, or when they've had a really bad experience, right? And so, in my view, if we're experiencing low survey return rates, I'm concerned not just from the standpoint of not having the data that we need, but also I'm concerned about the idea that maybe we're not creating experiences for families that are exceptional to the extent that they're motivated to actually take the time to complete a survey.
Yeah.
So I think there's actually something to be said for customer satisfaction itself in survey return rate.
Yeah. And I mean, opening it up beyond the survey itself, right, and going into that customer service and customer experience, what role does staff training play in creating a positive customer experience? And how are you guys on the management operational level ensuring that your team is aligned with that overall customer service goal that you have at Thomas McAfee Funeral Homes?
Yeah, I think training is critical. There's no doubt about that. We are relentlessly focused on training. But just as important is culture, I think. And then I think there's kind of the alignment of both of those, right? Training in the context of culture, maybe, is how I would put it. And so I think from a training standpoint, we're there are a few things that we really try to incorporate into our training. One is sharing the why behind everything that we train the team on, right? To making sure they understand not just what we're asking them to do, but why we're asking them to do that, how that is connected to our values and the end goal, which is our effort to create exceptional experiences for families, right? And then the second thing is we want to make sure we're training the soft skills to the same extent that we're training the hard skills, right? And so it's more difficult to do from a training standpoint. I think it takes more, from the management team's perspective. It takes more. It takes some creative thought. It takes collaboration. It takes being dynamic. Many times you're not going to create a procedure necessarily for training soft skills, but I think it's really critical.
Yeah,
So I
and
think,
everyone has their own style with customer service. There's obviously a foundation that you're instilling in everyone, but those soft skills that you're talking about, I would think that you kind of have to take that back to even just the hiring step of finding the right team members for Thomas McAfee, and making sure that you guys are building a team that's cohesive and brings everything that you need. So it's really impressive what you guys and all funeral homes do, just in my opinion. And that's coming from someone who does not work in funeral homes. I have a hospitality background and event management, and it was definitely a different environment trying to get someone to complete a survey after planning their corporate conference than after planning a funeral home or a funeral service. So
I think you've got to find, there's so many good people in this profession, right? And I think, when you can find the good people who are motivated by the right things, and where you can find values alignment, you're right. Hiring is a huge part of it, for sure.
That's awesome. Well, can you share any success stories or examples where feedback from Performance Tracker X has led to some systemic change within Thomas McAfee Funeral Homes? You guys have been on the survey platform for a couple of years now, and I know you've worked with Vince on our business consulting team as well. So I'm just curious to see, how that data is being used.
Yeah, I mean, for one, it's really changed the way that we give feedback. So, directors can see that real-time feedback. The management team can get that real-time feedback and share it with the team. We do that a lot of times on our morning call. We take any issues that are brought up on those surveys really seriously, and so we're able to address those both with the family and internally with the team, really quickly. So it's made feedback more actionable for us. That's for sure, and that's been a big deal. I think, another thing that's been big for us is the, I guess I would say, the accessibility of the data that we have. The customer service data has allowed us to create this incentive compensation plan that incorporates the data from Performance Tracker, right? And so it's just been a great marriage there, and thinking about how we build out an incentive compensation plan that incentivizes family satisfaction, right? And incentivizes the creation of exceptional experiences. And so I think that's another thing that when we think about aligning our actions with our culture and our expectations for our culture, I think if we're really serious about making the family experience our top priority, then let's measure it, and then let's hold ourselves accountable to the results, and let's incentivize the family experience, right? And reward people when they're able to create something that's exceptional. And we couldn't do any of that without this performance tracker system. And so it's really been a game changer for us, I think, in a lot of ways.
I love that. One of the other individuals that I interviewed for this year, they also noted how just the entire experience, because the survey asks about every part of the experience that a family has for their service, and even like the facilities side of how everything's looking on property, and it just makes everyone care more as a team. So I think that incentive compensation plan where the customer service results are part of it, and it's not just sales based, is really a big differentiator for what the Johnson Consulting team puts into bonus structures versus just someone who's looking solely at sales. So
Yeah, Taylor, to your point, I really love that the survey incorporates the entire experience. To me, it creates and incentivizes a different level of ownership, right, among the team, right? So if you have an arranger who sees something coming on a survey that may be unrelated to their direct interaction with the family, well, that's going to prompt that arranger, and we've seen this many times. That arranger is going to come to us and say, "Hey, how do we get this fixed?
yeah,
How do we get this issue that was just brought up fixed?" Because they now are responsible for the entire experience of the family, and
yeah.
I think it's a great kind of a mindset shift to see happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, the taking the ownership of the experience, and especially with what is a family business. You guys can't have a McAfee in every single room with every single family when you're operating at the call volume and the number of locations that you guys have. So to just instill that sense of ownership amongst your team members and have them care as much as an owner should care about their business is something that's really special. And I think that it needs to happen more so on the corporation level of funeral homes too, not just on the family run businesses with multiple locations or a single mom and pop shop. So that's an interesting insight to the industry. Now, with all four locations winning, how would you define excellence in customer service within your funeral homes? I know that's kind of a broad statement, but I wanted to open it up to you.
Yeah. So I guess first I'll just say, we were really, really excited about, the fact that all four locations received this award, and I think the whole team was really excited, and just a testament to how hard that team works, at every location, and so just a really cool experience for us. I think for me, I think about earning trust and building generational relationships, right? Um, and doing that because we've created experiences for families that were deeply meaningful and profound, and because families feel genuinely cared for, right? And in order for that to happen, requires the entire team to do more, right? It requires the entire team to to go above and beyond. And the way I think about it is, a family has an exceptional experience when 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 they feel genuinely cared for in every interaction they have with us, right? And so again, that requires every member of the team. It's not just the funeral director, although the funeral director is vitally important. It's not just the administrative assistant. It's every person on the team, being aligned in that mindset, and in kind of understanding what the end goal is, which is to create something exceptional for every family, and that can look very different from one family to another. But I think a lot of times that can happen in the small interactions, right? That when the small interactions align with align from an experience standpoint with everything else that's happening, the big things, then there's something really profound that happens, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful, just in the customer experience in general, and I mean specifically in funeral homes with that personal connection that that all funeral directors are hopefully instilled with. And just from my observations of working within the profession now for 5 years, I've definitely noticed that level of care just amongst everyone who's working with families, which is really an honorable thing that is just instilled in everyone throughout the profession. So, one thing that I noticed when we lost my grandfather, who was like the patriarch of our family, it was really the first time that my dad or any of his siblings had lost a parent, and really didn't know left or right. They didn't know what to expect from pricing. I kind of helped because of my knowledge of the industry, but when they were at Whitney Murphy Funeral Home here in Scottsdale, they actually, I mean, being presented with options in the discussions was a really big thing for my aunt, because we refer to her as Fancy Nancy. She's very like, she loves everything to be as grand as it can be. And, she didn't know like what they were capable of in terms of going above and beyond for the family and what could be planned. So I think just that goes back to even what you were talking about with training too, and having your staff knowing to present options to family members as well, and not just like, oh, this is direct cremation and or whatever it is. So
I think that's a great point. It's something we talk about all the time with our team, and specifically with our directors. How important it is to present options, and how important it is to put yourself in the family's shoes and remember how little they might know about funeral service.
yeah.
So we built out, we call it kind of our arrangement conference framework, right? And there are a number of different components of that framework, but it's really built around this idea of creating exceptional experiences for families, by genuinely serving their needs and grief, and by building trust, building relationships, genuinely caring about them. But part of the framework, a really important part, is that we talk about this responsibility we have to present options, and to act as a guide for the family, as opposed to an order taker, right? And to help the family understand that we want to genuinely guide them in a direction that is best for them, based on our understanding of the family, based on what we learned in the arrangement conference. What they share with us, and there's a lot of direction we can give based on our experience, and so I think it takes some courage from the standpoint of the arranger in that room, though, to be willing to kind of step out there and lead, and give guidance and give direction. But critically important. I'm really glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, of course. I was kind of triggered by it because of a word that you used. You said journey in the experience, and that's exactly, the sentiment that I get when you're talking about the experience that you're trying to curate for your families, is that it really is a journey that they need to be guided through. So especially when, emotions are so high, and they're probably not as present as they would be in another type of CX scenario, so.
Yeah.
Well, we have about 5 minutes left. I do want to wrap things up with one more question. And then if anyone, I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the call, I apologize, but if anyone has any questions for Jay directly, you can type them into the Q&A section of the webinar, and I'll review and see if we've had any questions submitted. But you can also email me directly, and then I can put you in touch with Jay, or get you some answers from him directly if something comes up later. So Jay, just this last one in here, is there anything else that you really want to like add or highlight in this interview, in this space, to wrap everything up for customer experience?
Yeah, well, I think, I'll kind of reinforce an underlying theme maybe, which is just the importance of culture. from my perspective at least. I think it's something in our company that we talk about a lot. And I think some people might have a hard time understanding the connection between culture and customer experience, but to me, it's critical. And so, I think about Jay McAfee a decade ago, and he would probably be rolling his eyes at the soft and squishy nature of this conversation I'm having about culture. But I think I know Jay McAfee today really believes in this idea that when everything is aligned with a culture that prioritizes the family experience, some really inspiring things can happen. And that's by alignment, we're talking about hiring and training and process development and mindset of the whole team. It all has to be aligned, but when it is, it's been pretty neat for me to see what's been able to happen in our organization.
I mean, and it's certainly working for you because, as much as Jay McAfee 10 years ago would have cringed, Jay McAfee today won 4 awards for all of his locations this year. So that's pretty awesome. Well, Jay, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today. I think that this was a super insightful conversation. And anyone who was not able to join us live today will receive a recorded copy of this webinar as well. To introduce the next tea time that we will be having next month is actually a walkthrough of our Trends and Insights report, which is annually published. Jay's interview, as well as Paul and Jimmy Altmeier's interviews, will be included in that report as well. And then we will be joined by Vince Roberge from the business consulting team, as well as Jake Johnson, to answer some questions from that Trends and Insight report. So I hope all of you have a great afternoon. Jay, thank you again for your time today. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks, Taylor.